Well, hello again, Crocker. I'm going to go through one last set of notes here for you today. That's on the food chain. Let's take a look at this little guy right here on my laundry. Good look at him. This is Yogi the cat. How did he get his energy? Well, let's talk about the food chain. Today's notes are called food chain. Now, if you want to know more about it, or you want to know where a lot of this came from, open up that link, check out the CK12. Well, if you watch the videos already, you know about grasshoppers. How does the grasshopper and the grass interact? Is it a predatory relationship? Yeah, it kind of is, right? Remember, the grasshopper eats the grass. The other organisms, some organisms, eat the grasshopper. This is what is called the food chain. How does an organism get the energy it needs to survive? Now, if you watch the amoeba sister video, you'll know it would be the frog that ate the grasshopper, and then sadly, animal ate the frog. I believe that was a snake. Well, who eats whom here? Once again, there's a big cat. Yogi, let's get back to you. All right. Once again, how did Yogi get its food? Now, Yogi, being a domesticated cat, doesn't have to go hunting like this guy did for his meat. But Yogi definitely prefers meat, right? With his diet, he is more of a carnivore. Yogi, thank you. Let's come back over here. A food chain represents a single pathway by which energy and matter flow through an ecosystem. Right? So remember the plant, everything, it starts, what's missing here on this diagram, there's two things missing. One would be sunlight. Because remember, sunlight gets stored up into the plant through the process of, that's right, photosynthesis, where it all begins. Then the grasshopper eats the plant. Then the bird eats the grasshopper. Then a snake eats the bird. And then an owl eats the snake. This shows the levels of what the food chain, right? We've got the autotroph, we got the primary consumer, the secondary consumer, the tertiary consumer, and then the quaternary consumer. You're going to want to know that vocabulary. So a food chain represents one path, a single pathway. Now, what's been added to this diagram over here that you probably didn't see before was decomposers. Because remember, once the owl meets its maker, it's going to, its nutrients, and nitrogen in particular, will go back into the soil, use, the FBI, remember the fungus, bacteria, and the invertebrates that bring those materials, the matter back into the soil to be used for the next round of producers. And so what can we add to this food chain to make it more accurate? You would probably add the sunlight to show for the original source of the energy, and then the decomposers, which are putting vital materials back in, not energy, but the matter back into the soil, which will aid in the nitrogen cycle. Remember, food chains model one single way how energy is transferred to an organism. Now, before we saw an owl was the quaternary level. In this case over here, the owl is actually placed on the secondary level, right? The corn would be your primary, and then would be your first level, the primary, let me get this right. The producer, the primary consumer, and then the secondary consumer. That would be a 3-link food chain. It can be a little bit more complex, right? You can have a 4-link one, right? We can have the lion eats the fox eats the bunny, and the bunny ate, of course, a carrot, right? So the carrot would be your autotroph, also called the producer. And then here's to be your first level, which is the primary consumer, the secondary consumer, and then the tertiary. Now over here, we got a 5-link food chain, which means we've got the primary. This is a lot like the amoeba sister. We see this one a lot. Primary, secondary. Wait. This is the autotroph, the producer, primary consumer, secondary consumer, tertiary consumer, quaternary consumer. Once again, kids, you're going to want to know that vocabulary. It's going to help you out. All right. So in this slide over here, the primary producer is the phytoplankton. All right. The phytoplankton would be your primary producer, and then the primary consumer would be the zooplankton. You know, food chains usually have arrows to show the direction of the energy. And this one over here, it doesn't. But however, it kind of shows you in the same way. You can think of the arrows kind of pointing up, getting all the way to the ordinary consumer. I kind of like this slide because it shows the difference between, the different, you got the aquatic versus the terrestrial tropics. Right, so where you start off with different things. Over here, you got your phytoplankton, the zooplankton, the fish, the seal, and eventually a white shark. And so what we're going to do is we want to try to put all this off into the idea of the pyramid, which are called the energy pyramids. Pyramids, you can see they're big and thick on the bottom, and they kind of gradually kind of narrow up to the top. These are really good ways to model what happens with food chains and food webs. All right, so the feeding position in a food chain or a web is called the trophic level. So where you're at in the food chain, you consist of different trophic levels. And energy is passed up the food chain from lower to higher levels. But what's key to understand is the 10% rule, that only 10% of the energy of one level is available to the next level. And that is represented by the ecological pyramid. That's why you have fewer and fewer organisms as you move up. The ecological pyramid, if that means if we start off with 1 million kilocalories of energy down here, I would only have 100,000 kilocalories of energy at that primary consumer level. And then 10,000 kilocalories at the next level. What I need to do is just keep removing zeros from here. So how much energy would be available for the tertiary consumers? 1,000 kilocalories. And then finally, only 100 kilocalories. And this explains why we don't have too many eagles. All right, there's only so many snakes for that eagle to eat, and there's only so many rodents and frogs for these snakes to eat. And there's only so many primary consumers. There's like a way of nature can only regulate itself. Here's a nice image over here for the ecological pyramid, the energy pyramid. Once again, this one has the sun's energy funneling in the primary producers, going all the way up the level. This one doesn't have the term tertiary, it's just called third level. The whatever's on the top of the ecological pyramid is oftentimes called an apex predator. One last nice image. Now, look, I really hope that you're taking some of these pyramids and you're writing on the output side of your notebook. You really need to do that. Remember to please use the output for diagrams. Be 3 different really diagrams you should be having in here. One would be a food chain. One would be the energy pyramid. And the last would be a food web, which comes on my next couple slides. But one thing what I like about this one is the way that it was interacted with, where we have heat, expressing why we have the 10% rule. And then over here, we can see the numbers, how we just keep losing zeros as we move up the pyramid in terms of the amount of kilocalories available for the next energy level. Now, food chains are too simple to represent the real world. Therefore, we have food webs, which consist of many overlapping food chains. But yet you can create food chains from food webs. Like, for instance, I could say the grasshopper, is primary consumer, secondary consumer, tertiary consumer. In this case, it looks like he's the apex because he's at the top of the food web. That represents one single path. But of course, remember, this bird is not only eating this little mousie, right? It's also eating other things, right? It might just eat the bug straight up, right? It might eat a snake. It might eat a bunny. Okay, so there's a lot of different things this bird's going to eat. It's not just going to focus its diet, not like me and tacos, right? It's going to probably focus its energy on other things. Now, a food web, once again, has a whole bunch of arrows. It can look real complex, but remember, the whole thing is that the arrows should always be pointing to another organism, right? The phytoplankton is going to the zooplankton, which is going to these other animals. You should usually see just one arrow pointing to different things. It looks like this ringed seal is both meat for both the polar bear and the killer whale, which are both kind of apex predators in a different way. It's not like the killer whale and the polar bear are, sometimes they eat on each other. I don't think they do. I have no idea. Put a polar bear and a killer whale together, I don't know who's going to eat whom. I have no idea. They might just basically just say, look, we'll split the seal. Right? I like the tail personally. Can you create a food chain for the tertiary consumers? Well, first of all, how many tertiary consumers are there? That's right, three. So let's pick one of them. Let's pick the mountain lion, also called a puma or a cougar. And the mountain lion looks like it might eat a western whiptail. Now, what did western whiptail eat? Well, it ate a whole bunch of different things, right? Let's say he ate a Pacific tree frog. And what did the tree frog eat? Some plant, right? Some nuts, seed, fruit, insects. He's a vegetarian, right? So the Pacific tree frog would be your primary, whiptail secondary, mountain lion tertiary. We can go to the coyote, and the coyote, we can either make him a tertiary or a secondary consumer based on how we want to make the food chain. To make him a secondary consumer, what we do is have him eat a mule deer. Now, I don't think a coyote is going to eat a mule deer on its own. I think they kind of exist in packs, and they come up there and they attack it on one. I think maybe a single mountain lion might be able to take down a mule deer, but I can't imagine a little coyote taking down a mule deer. However, you get a pack of them, you know. Now, a coyote will eat a jackrabbit, no problem, right? All right, well, this slideshow helped. I'm going to be talking more about it on Thursday. All right. So that's that. Let me see if I can turn this thing off. I always have struggle turning it. There we go. Good. I got it.